subject and verb agreement, you get it right, you understand it properly and use it properly, correctly in your conversation or communication, you will get rid of almost 75% of your errors. So essay type, it's a long answer type, so you will have to answer any 2 out of the 4 given questions. Choice is less. Some prose like novel or anything where there is dialogue or monologue, so that may follow this everyday language. Few poems which follow some rhythm will have fixed meter or maybe fixed number of words. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shalini, Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today I am going to introduce you to the syllabus prescribed for first sem BCom by University of Mysore. So we'll just understand what is there in today's module. We'll be knowing about the syllabus prescribed for the first sem and the pattern of evaluation. How will the evaluation happen? And also the pattern of question paper. What is there in your question paper? So these we'll be understanding in this module today. So let's begin. The first thing is the poetry. You know what's a poetry? Poetry is a collection of poems. So we have almost 8 poems over here. Okay, we have 8 poems for this semester prescribed. So which are those? The first one is authored by William Shakespeare. So it's a sonnet. This is sonnet number 2. So sonnet is a poem that has 14 lines, so that you'll be learning in the coming sessions. So it's a sonnet. Shakespeare was very well known for his sonnets. So out of that, one of the very famous sonnets, that is when 40 winters shall beseech thy brow. So that you'll be understanding in this semester. After that, we have William Wordsworth, who was known as the nature poet. So his poem, The World is Too Much With Us. So that's the second poem you have. The third one, The Wagon of Shoes, written by Avram Sutzkever. He is also known as Yiddish poet. Okay, so some people also pronounce it as Abraham. So Avram or Abraham Sutzkever, he writes about the wagon of shoes. This is actually, he describes a war scene there. So this is something related to the Holocaust or the German dictator, that is Hitler. So this is the poem related to that. So then 9 gold medals written by David Roth. This is also a very interesting poem for you. Then we have Rabindranath Tagore's False Religion. He writes about the religion that is practiced, like we practice religion but which is very much false, that should not be followed. So that is about Rabindranath Tagore's poem. Then we have George Herbert's Avarice. So that poem also you have. This also is a very interesting poem. Okay, you'll enjoy reading it. So then we have Robert Burns, one of the poems that is a romantic poems. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose. So he compares his love to the red rose. Okay, most commonly it is compared like that only. So this poet also, but it is differently compared in this poem. So then at last we have Give Patel's On Killing a Tree. This is also something related to nature. What are the effects of killing a tree? What happens? What are the after effects, the consequences of killing a tree? Okay, so usually you cut the tree, isn't it? You don't kill a tree. So how do you kill a tree? So that is very interesting here. Okay, so Give Patel writes about that. So this collection of poems you'll be studying under poetry. Then we have prose also. Okay, we have prose also. What do we have in this prose? We have George Orwell's The Miser. Okay, it's a short story. It's called as Miser. Okay, then we have Saki, who is an Indian writer. He has written this Storyteller. So these both are short stories. So these both you will be learning. Then we have Ramachandra Guha, who is also an Indian author. He was a political writer. So he is a political writer. He also has written about nature. So he has written a book out in which this is one of the essays. So those both were short stories. This is an essay. Going Green is an essay there in one of the books. Then we also will be studying about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's essay, The Position of Women in Hinduism and Buddhism. So how are women treated in Hinduism and Buddhism? That we'll be understanding. Okay, so he was actually a Hindu, but later on he converts himself, he accepts Buddhism. So he has compared the position of women. So that we'll be understanding in this semester. So then we have language component also. Language component is all about grammar. Okay, so what are we learning in grammar? We'll be learning about punctuation. Okay, so it's all about full stop, comma, colon, semicolon, question mark, quotes, all these. So we'll be learning about punctuation. Then we have articles. Okay, articles are the words that are used to introduce nouns. So you must have heard about this a, an, and the. So this is what we are going to understand under articles. So then we have prepositions. Very easy. Prepositions is one of the part of speech, and this tells us about the relationship of the subject in connection to the other words in the sentence. So examples of prepositions: on, in, over, all these are examples of prepositions. Okay, we'll be learning more. Different types of prepositions also we'll be learning in this semester when we go in detail. So then the other one what we have is the subject verb agreement. This is the most important topic in English grammar. So this constitutes almost 75% of the errors. If at all you get this right, subject and verb agreement, you get it right, you understand it properly and use it properly, correctly in your conversation or communication, you will get rid of almost 75% of your errors in communication. So this is very, very important. So subject verb agreement or subject verb concord. So we'll be going in detail in the coming sessions. So now we have to understand the pattern of evaluation. So how is your marks divided? How is the marks divided? We'll be understanding. So you will be having internals first. So the first internal test is for 10 marks. Okay, first internal test is for 10 marks. Here you will be given questions about prose or poetry. Okay, about prose or poetry, it depends on the teacher. So this is all for 10 marks. It will be written assessment. It will be held like a class test. Then we have the second internal test. It is purely about this language component part. So that is also for 10 marks. And in the third place, we have this class test. It can also be on an oral test. The teacher can conduct it like a viva for you in the class, or maybe some assignment can be given. So some question can be given to you and you have to write about it. So that can also happen, or maybe some surveys can be given to you. Like you are given a question and you have to go around and collect information, collect data. So that also can be done, or maybe you will be asked to conduct some interview or paper presentation, something like this. So this will constitute for 10 marks. So both the internals, that is first class test and second class test, they may be in this format. Okay, it can be interviews, it can be written test, it can be oral test, it can be assignment, or it can be any survey also. Again, that will constitute 10 marks. Okay, so altogether internals will be for 40 marks. Internals will be for 40 marks. So it is very important for you to attend the internals. So then term and exam, we have it for 60 marks. So 60 plus 40 internals, then you get it for altogether, that is 100 marks. 40 marks internals, then for 60 marks is the term and exam paper. So be very careful, you have to attend the internals at any cost. So let us go further now. The pattern of question paper. How will be the question paper for you? So you'll have objective type questions, that is one word answers. It is not MCQ, it is one word answer, or you have to answer in one phrase. It can be one word or maybe it can be a phrase. You have to answer in a phrase. Phrase is a group of words. So one word or one phrase. So that is for 8 marks. So there will be option there. 15 questions will be given. You have to answer any 8. So then we have reference to context. That means it will be from the poetry only. It will be from the poetry only. It is also called as annotation. Okay, annotation. They will give you a few lines from the poem. They'll pick few lines from the poem and ask you to annotate it. Okay, so you will have to write from which poem it is chosen, who is the poet of that, who has written that poem, and in what context it is written. So all that you have to write, and you have to answer 4 of it. So that's it. You will have to answer any 3 of it. So out of 6 poetry, there will be choice. You have 8 poems. But you have to answer, you have to read any 6, and out of that you have to answer any 3. You cannot leave any because you don't know from which poem it will be coming. So you have to read all the 8. You cannot decide and choose which 6 you are going to read. Okay, so you have to read all the 8, then answer any 3. So don't go for the 6. Okay, you decide that you'll read all the 8 and then you can answer any 3. So then essay type questions on prose. So essay type, it's a long answer type. So you will have to answer any 2 out of the 4 given questions. Choice is less. So that is for 10 marks. Okay, that's for 10 marks. Each question is for 5 marks. Okay, each question is for 5 marks and you'll have to answer any 2 of the given 4. Choice is less, so you have to read all those. Fine. Then essay type questions on poetry. Poetry also you have this 5 marks questions and that will be out of 4 you have to answer any 2. So similar to this prose, you have to answer like that only in poetry also. So both of it will be essay type. Okay, so how much does it come up to? 10, 10, 12 and 8. So 20 plus 20, 40. This is altogether for 40 marks and what is remaining? That is the language component. So what is there in language component? So in grammar and composition, that is the language component part, you have this punctuation, questions about punctuation, everything will be 1 mark question. So you'll have 5, maybe fill in the blanks or something like that. Okay, so you'll have 5 questions. Again, articles you'll have for 5 marks. Then prepositions also you'll have it for 5 marks, all 1 mark questions only. There is no choice over here, you have to answer all the 5. So none of these mains will have choice. Then we have this subject and verb agreement. So that is also for 5 marks. So this altogether comes to 20 marks. So what has happened now? Internals 40 marks, prose and poetry, that is for 40 marks. This is for internals 40 marks. Then you have prose. Okay, so that is for 40 marks again. Then you have this language component part. So this language component also you have it for 20 marks. Okay, so this altogether comes to 100 marks. So this is the pattern of question paper you will be having. So this was all about syllabus. Apart from this, you need to know few things. So I'll just introduce you to few terms that you have to be familiar with. Few things you have to know before you can get into studies here. So what are those things? What are those terms you have to understand? What is a prose? We already know what is, like, which are the prose that is there. So now we'll be understanding what is a prose. We are going to understand what is the term now. So prose is nothing but a written piece of work. Okay, it's actually a written piece of work and it contains sentences. Poetry actually does not contain complete sentences, but prose contains complete sentences. It contains sentences and paragraphs. If at all it was poetry, you have stanzas or maybe verses also, but in prose you have paragraphs. So which are the kinds of writing that come under prose are this: short stories, novels, journals, articles, all these essays, letters, editorials, all these come under prose only. So it actually follows natural pattern of speech, like how you speak, okay, how you deliver the meaning to the listener. That is the way the prose is there. So it is just written in complete sentences. You can, as you are speaking, you can just read and go. So that is called as a prose. It actually has a specific grammatical structure. So the sentence structure will be there and that is called as a grammatical structure. It follows it and sentences and paragraphs are there according to the grammatical structure. Then they may use this everyday language. Some prose like novel or anything where there is dialogue or monologue, so that may follow this everyday language. So whenever you read few novels or so or works or so, you may feel that yes, you are looking at somebody who is at your neighborhood. Okay, so that is the beauty of this prose. So then sentences and thoughts, they actually continue across lines. Means when you read the paragraphs, there is a flow of ideas in the paragraphs. Okay, so one para is related to another para. You are reading one para and it is not at all connected to the second. It is not like that in a prose. It will be continuously connected. The idea flows continuously. So that is all about prose. Now we'll understand what is poetry. Poetry is actually a collection of poems. If it is one, it is poem. If it is a set of many poems put together, that is called as a poetry. So what is a poetry? It's a way of expressing impressions, emotions and events that are highly compressed. You cannot have long sentences in a poetry, in a poem. Okay, so that's why it is compressed and every word counts. there is a fixed number of words in a poem, in a verse or in a line in a poem. Okay, it is not like you have to have one line may have many words, other line will have lesser words. No, it's not like that. Few poems which follow some rhythm will have fixed meter or maybe fixed number of words. So that is the beauty of poetry. So whenever you add a tune to it, it will be very melodious. So that is what is a poem or poetry. So this is said to be the most beautiful form of literature. Poems are considered to be the most beautiful form of literature because you cannot add a tune to a prose, but you can add tune and you can sing also with the poetry. So this is all about poetry, and words which are chosen by the poet. Words which are chosen by the poet, they are chosen with utmost care because he has to think that if it is complete sentence, he can write it very easily. When it has to be a poem, it is limited. So he has to be very careful in choosing the words. So whoever writes a prose, for example, if at all a person has written a novel, okay, he is called as an author. But a person who writes a poem is not called as an author, he is called as a poet. Okay, or a poetess if it is a lady. So this is the difference between the prose and the poetry. Okay, so there is one more thing you have to understand, that is the rhyme scheme. So this is very interesting. Probably you might have learnt in your lower classes, lower grades, but it is very interesting to learn it now also. Suppose we'll consider a stanza. I'll just write a stanza, very well known poem for you. That is you might have heard this poem, right? Isn't it? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. You might have heard, right? The rhyme. Okay. I'm going to write only 2 lines. I'm just going to write 2 lines. Other than that, I'll be writing the last 2 words of the other line. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. So this is the most well-known rhyme, I can say. So why did I write about rhyme scheme? So here you can see that the word star rhymes with R. You have to choose the rhyming words like this and you can give a name to it. You give a name to it like this. It can be a small a, it can be a capital A also. That depends. So here you can see high and sky are rhyming. So now you can give another name for this. I'll be considering the capital letters, uppercase letters I'll be considering. So these are the rhyming words you have marked. You don't consider anything in between. You're going to consider only the last words that are rhyming. So the rhyme scheme you can mark. You have already marked the rhyming words over here. So suppose somebody asks you, what is the rhyme scheme of the poem? Okay, what is the rhyme scheme of the poem? Suppose somebody asks you, then you will write it as AABB. So this is the rhyme scheme of the poem. As the paragraph continues, you can continue with the names like CCDD this way. You can continue it that way. So this is called as the rhyme scheme. There are many names given to it like iambic pentameter, all these and all. So you need not have to worry too much about it. Rhyme scheme, if you mark, that much is enough. So this, when you know the rhyme scheme, adding a tune to it will be very easy. Okay, whenever you have this rhyme scheme, the poem can be sung with a rhythm. Okay, the poem will have a rhythm in it. So this is all about rhyme scheme. So the terms you had to be familiar with were poetry or poems, then you have this rhyme scheme. So this was all about the introduction of syllabus. So let us meet again in our next session, that is about the first poem. Okay, we'll be learning the first poem prescribed for you in the list of poems. So let us meet again. See you soon with another interesting session. Take care. Bye-bye.